Matt Taibbi being threatened with prison time. This has gone too far. I've been talking to people about this, I think the past, 24 hours. This whole situation with Matt Taibbi in the Twitter files and the level that it has been taken to the point where he has been smeared, where he was invited onto that interview with Mehdi Hasan and he was attacked there. And this has gone too far now, to the point where you have people in Congress that want Matt Taibbi to go to prison for 5 years. Now, Ryan Grimm was the first person that I saw tweet this out. Democrat Representative Stacey Plaskett is threatening Matt Taibbi with prison over his Twitter files testimony. The testimony is actually accurate, though. She's referring to an error in a tweet that's been corrected. That's besides the point. To call for a reporter to be jailed is beyond the pale. Now, do you see why we continue to say free Julian Assange? Edward Snowden should have been the first big warning sign. Now, do you see journalists are not protected? You have government officials calling for journalists to be imprisoned. Now, I want to show you the letter because I want you to see what they actually said. This is just ridiculous. So he put the link here. Let me see if it'll let me show it because it's PDF. Okay, yeah, it does. So here's the letter. And it says, Matthew Taibbi. We're going to get to the part I want you to see because this letter's kind of long and I know you don't want to read all that jazz. Let me go down. This part right here. Let me come out just a little bit. I would like to provide you with the opportunity to correct the hearing record to ensure accuracy in congressional hearing and so that the public and their representatives are not misled. Specifically, on March 9th, immediately before your appearance before the subcommittee, you released an additional installment of the so-called, look at, again, pay attention to the vocabulary, so-called Twitter files on your personal Twitter. As part of that installment, you allege that the Election Integrity Partnership, the EIP, worked with Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, a component of the Department of Homeland Security, to ask social media companies to remove disinformation on these platforms. You wrote, it is crucial to reiterate, EIP was partnered with state entities like CISA and GEC while seeking elimination of millions of tweets. In the Twitter files, Twitter execs did not distinguish between organizations using phrases like according to CIS, and then there's the A there, escalated via EIP. So they have the screenshot there. This was the error that Mehdi Hasan was trying to get him on in that interview. We'll check that out in just a second. But this is the piece I want you to hone in on right here. The above statements now seem to be contradicted by your own admission. On April 6, 2023, you appeared for an interview on the Mehdi Hasan show on MSNBC. During that interview, Mr. Hasan pointed out that your March 9th tweet added a parenthetical A to the acronym CIS, changing the meaning of the term from Center for Internet Security, a private organization, to Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. This mistake is important because by adding an A, you weren't making a harmless spelling error. Rather, you were alleging that CISA, a government entity, was working with the EIP to have posts removed from social media. When presented with this misinformation, you acknowledge that you made an error. This is why I say that interview was a trap. This was Mehdi Hasan trying to find a way to prove or to make people believe that Matt Taibbi is not credible. And if he can convince people that you're not credible, he convinces people that your work is not credible. And now everything that you have revealed about the Twitter files can be dismissed by the American people because he was able to do a gotcha. But as we showed on the show, thanks to Li Feng, it actually wasn't a gotcha. Li Feng had actually explained that Matt Taibbi actually was correct. But this was a setup. Do you guys see what happened here? Mehdi Hasan back in the State Department. So he repeats State Department talking points. They coexist together. He not going to work against them. He going to work and cooperate with them. That's how he gets to keep that job. That's why he gets paid the big bucks. That's how this works. This is why I wish Matt didn't do that interview. This was all a setup. Let's go on. This piece right here, in addition to your error regarding CISA, it has become clear that your reporting is rife with numerous other false or misleading claims. You see what they're doing? All they had to do was find one thing, which is what Mehdi Hasan believes that he did. He finding one thing, and then they're able to dismiss all of it. They point out here, during March 9th, you repeatedly referred to the Twitter file post you had released earlier that day. Among other claims, your March 9th post stated, according to the EIP's own data, it succeeded in getting nearly 22 million tweets labeled in the run-up to the 2020 vote. It goes on to say here, in fact, the EIP analyzed 21,897,364 tweets discussing false claims in 2020. From that data set, it identified just 2,890 tweets as being a violation of Twitter's stated policies because, for example, those tweets led to phishing. So this led down a rabbit hole. We're not going to go through each one of these, but I want to show you what they're basically trying to do now. Accordingly, as soon as possible, but no later than April 21st, which is today, please provide answers to the following questions. So these are all the questions. And see, you got to be careful because how he answers these questions could be tricky as well. This could also be a trap. And then right here, it says, prior to your appearance before the subcommittee on March 9th, you signed the Judiciary Committee's Truth and Testimony form, certifying that you understood that knowingly providing material, false information to this committee, subcommittee, or knowingly concealing material or information from this committee or subcommittee is a crime. In addition, at the beginning of March 9th hearing, you swore under penalty of perjury that the testimony you were about to give was true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief. Under federal perjury statute, providing false information is punishable up to 5 years of imprisonment. And this is signed by Stacey Plaskett, the same Stacey Plaskett that I revealed to you that took donations from Jeffrey Epstein after he was arrested. Direct payments from Jeffrey Epstein after he was arrested. Remember, she represents the Virgin Islands. What has it been revealed about the Virgin Islands and Jeffrey Epstein? That's where his island was. That JP Morgan knowingly knew they were funding that. And she took money from him after he was arrested. This is coming from her. But I don't think it's just her too. I don't think it's just her. She's a part of the Democratic Party. Who's the minority speaker of the House? Hakeem Jeffries. So I'm sure he okayed this too. This is what they're trying to do to Matt Taibbi. That interview with Mehdi Hasan was a setup. It was a trap. And I say this repeatedly because it was after that interview that, because Matt Taibbi admitted to making an error, Mehdi Hasan went on to tweet and say that he committed perjury. And then you get this letter saying perjury is a crime. I'm sorry, but I believe this was all planned. Now, Lee Fong, he debunked this. I want to show you where he debunked it. He said, here is my first Substack story. Mehdi Hasan claimed Taibbi deliberately and under oath misrepresented the facts about DHS, CISA's work with content moderation org EIP. That is a serious charge, one that I debunk with the new Twitter file, emails, and other docs. And that's his Substack. Mehdi claimed Taibbi lied under oath to Congress, a felony that can be prosecuted with prison, by claiming CISA worked with EIP on content moderation. Mehdi says the truth is that only a private sector org with a similar acronym, CIS, worked with EIP. Mehdi is wrong, and here is how. EIP had an internal ticketing system to flag content for censorship to Twitter, and an internal message system to alert CIS and CISA. DHS/CISA elevate EIP flag tweets for Twitter. Here is a newly unearthed Twitter email in October 2020 showing the process. And here's that email right here. Yo, I had outreach on this from DHS and the CA Secretary of State. This EIP report we reviewed last week and found no enforcement was warranted. Now they say, based on Graphica's analysis, that there is a foreign implication. Can you take a look at the information below? Look at who it went to. Brian Scully, CISA Central, CFITF, Misinformation Reports, right? And it says here, Brian, we know many are already aware of this case, but the impact seems to be escalating. Our hope is that the platforms can do more to take down this misinformation. The EIP has been tracking this spread under ticket EIP 243 and has more examples. Case in point, it says CISA right here. So Matt was correct. And this is the point that Lee Fang was trying to point out. This was all a trap. All of it. Now, I encourage you to please check out this video. I'm not going to play it on here. This clip that I did is called Congresswoman Donations Raise Huge Flags. There's some things you need to see about Congresswoman Plaskett. By the way, I find it very interesting that someone who was a delegate, she's a delegate, she's a low-ranking official, she can't even vote. So I find it interesting that someone who is low-ranking has that much power. Now, to take you back, this is the point where Mehdi attempts to do the gotcha.
Done by 22 million were flagged in the run-up to the election, even though that number came in March 2021, which was after the election.
No, this came in their report after the election.
Which was about some total of tweets that they counted on the election. What they flagged to Twitter was 2,980 tweets, I believe. So that's nowhere near 22 million.
Come
on, what? You got something wrong. You got CISA wrong. Why did you add A? Okay, Matt, why did you add A in square brackets? Do you understand why people worry about?
I actually thought that.
And why didn't you fix it? I just checked the tweet before I came on air. It's been 3 weeks since it was flagged to you. Why not fix it? Do you not have editors at the racket?
I didn't realize that until now.
Okay, and what about the date? You got the date wrong when it was founded. You said it was founded in response to the Disinformation Board. That was last year.
Well, because Stamos is saying in the video that we were sort of created to fill the gaps
But no, that's not what you say in the tweet. That's not what you say in the tweet.
The SIO was created in 2008.
No. You say, this is what you say, that the EIP was created after the public uproar paused the disinformation board. That's wrong. You need to correct that as well, don't you?
After the...
That's what your words. You say, to quote you, after public uproar paused the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board, Stanford created the EIP. That's wrong.
Well, that's what they say.
You don't need sources, Matt. You could check the EIP website. It says it was created in 2020.
Well, that's the date that I just said.
And the Disinformation Board was 2022.
Okay. All right. Well, then that is an error.
But according to Li Feng, Matt was actually correct. You see, I told you that interview was a take me down. That's what it was. Let's convince people that, he's not credible. Matt Taibbi has responded. He says, "Dear Mehdi Hasan, here's the EIP website saying it partnered with CISA, the CIS site saying the same thing, and the award showing CIS is a DHS contractor. You're wrong on this, and you convinced a politician to threaten me with jail as a result. This has gone too far." And that was exactly the response that I gave to Ryan Grimm when he sent out that tweet. I was like, this has gone too far. Like, this is ridiculous. When I checked, Mehdi hadn't responded. He probably hiding now. I can check it again another time. But when I checked, he had not responded. And he gives the receipts right here. So what I'm going to say is this. We have news networks and journalist outlets that have become snitches now. They're doing the FBI's job for them. Look at the situation that happened with the Washington Post, where they ratted out the information about Jack, the guy who, allegedly leaked the Pentagon documents. Right? That was the Washington Post that did that. And you got Mehdi Hasan trying to turn over people. You have mainstream media networks and these journalist outlets becoming cops. That's what you have. Now, Michael Schellenberger issued a response as well. I'm glad that he's speaking out in reference to Matt Taibbi, because Elon sure as hell isn't.
Last month, Matt Taibbi and I testified to Congress about the existence of a censorship industrial complex. The night before, the U.S. government's Federal Trade Commission sent an extraordinary letter to Twitter owner Elon Musk.
The first FTC letter to Twitter after the first set of Twitter files, the very first question was, who are the journalists you're talking to?
Demanding that he, quote, identify all journalists involved in the reporting of the Twitter files. Then, at the very moment that members of Congress were accusing Matt and me of being fake journalists.
This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now.
An IRS agent visited Matt's home. They still haven't explained why.
Yep.
Happily, the attacks backfired. The members of Congress went too far, and their deliberate or accidental use of sexual innuendos.
So you're in this as a threesome?
Made them a laughingstock on social media. But it turns out that they weren't done. 2 weeks ago, I heard from a whistleblower that the censorship industry would shortly retaliate against us. It turned out that at that very moment, MSNBC host Mehdi Hasan was berating Matt Taibbi on air.
The man who used to gleefully heap abuse on the outrage industrial complex on Fox now appears regularly on that very propaganda network he once so wonderfully lampooned.
Shortly after, Hasan and a chorus of others in the mainstream news media falsely claimed that they had debunked the Twitter files. Now, the same member of Congress who called us so-called journalists is threatening Taibbi with prison time for supposedly lying to Congress. Representative Stacey Plaskett sent Matt a letter that recycles the same false MSNBC allegations that we debunked and ends by saying he could face 5 years imprisonment. Never in my life have I seen members of Congress threaten an expert witness with prison time. For the record, Matt's statements were accurate. A small error was made in a tweet, and as soon as Matt learned of it, he corrected it, as all ethical journalists would do. And now Lee Fong, formerly of The Intercept and now writing at Substack, has thoroughly debunked MSNBC's claims. What's more, Fong discovered that Hassan has repeatedly engaged in dis and misinformation himself, including plagiarism.
MSNBC host Mehdi Hassan authored a column in defense of spanking children. No harm in smacking, that is nearly a word-for-word duplication of the article When to Spank, published 2 years earlier in U.S. News and World Report.
I covered that earlier tonight on RBN. So Mehdi Hassan has some nerve to criticize someone else's journalistic work because he apparently has been plagiarizing people for years. He just didn't get caught.
The bottom line is this. The Twitter files blew the lid off the censorship industrial complex, and its leaders are retaliating, not just to scare us off, but to scare away other journalists. But here's the thing. They don't scare us. They energize us. We are undertaking a major effort to expose the connections between the censorship industrial complex and the military and intelligence communities in the so-called Five Eyes nations of the US, UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand. We are hiring several people to do the research and turn the table on the would-be totalitarians.
There you go.
All of this is happening at the same time that Facebook is cracking down on people who are raising questions about the war in Ukraine. The individuals who come from spy agencies who are now demanding censorship of their fellow citizens are breaking the law. They know we have caught them in the act, and they are scared. They should be scared. We can't do this alone. If you know something, say something. You may work in a government agency or for a think tank or university working on so-called mis and disinformation.
I'm sorry, when he said this part right here, where is it? Hold on, this part.
Individuals who come from spy agencies who are now demanding censorship of their fellow citizens are breaking the law. They know we have caught them in the act, and they are scared. They should be scared. We can't do this alone. If you know something, say something.
That part right there, when he said, if you know something, say something. Right after he said that, I was like, you too can prevent forest fires. I'm just being silly now.
You may work in a government agency or for a think tank or university working on so-called mis and disinformation. We need to hear from you. We will protect all confidences. We have already heard from several whistleblowers, and we need more. Just yesterday, an IRS whistleblower came forward to say that the IRS was giving special treatment to President Joe Biden's son, Hunter. Courage is contagious. And if you're still not a subscriber to Public, now is the time to join. If you would like to make a larger tax-deductible donation, please visit environmentalprogress.com/give. As always, please email me at my encrypted email address, michaelschellenberger@proton.me. When Matt and I testified to Congress about the existence of a censorship industrial complex, we were just getting started. We won't rest until we dismantle it and bury its parts deep underground.
Kudos to Michael Schellenberger for, defending Matt and working with him and continuing to work with him. That is a stand-up act. That's solid. He did a solid. Not too many people willing to do that. Just going to tell you. Most people will run. Most people will hide. Some of the mofos will disappear. Let's just be honest. So kudos to Michael Schellenberger for that. He gave his email address up there for you guys if you need that. But times are crazy. But what does it all mean? I want you to look at the big picture. The big picture is not just about the fact that they're coming after Matt Taibbi. That's just a small piece of this. They're coming after Matt Taibbi, but they're also coming after every independent journalist, period. But they're not just coming after them. What is the end game? Why are they doing this? They're doing this to instill fear in the American people. They're doing this to instill fear in journalists, independent journalists, you, me, You see, if they can threaten someone like Matt Taibbi, who's a phenomenal journalist, they can threaten him with prison time, and they still have Julian Assange in Belmarsh, then that will scare enough people to not want to report the truth. This is what you have to understand. This is all about fear. And if they make you afraid, they have control. Fear is very powerful. As long as you are afraid, they are in control. That is the end game. And that is why they're doing this. It's not just about Matt. It's about every independent journalist, free speech, revealing tough truths that they don't want the masses to hear. And that's why Julian Assange still sits in Belmarsh, even though he has not been formally charged with the crime.